our platform. And thank you. Thank you to our speakers and for you for being here. And to you for being here. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I am very happy to be here today. This Congress has been a very interesting space, not only to know processes from other places around the world, but also to have the opportunity of meeting people who are also passionate about for this topics of public spaces, of parks, of recreation and sports. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that for us became very important, and that's the innovation and sustainability in the environment of parks and public spaces to adapt ourselves and also to adjust and to mitigate the climate change. I am Blanca Durán. I'm director of an institute in Bogota, Colombia, that deals with two topics that in other cities are managed in individual way. On the one hand, we had the topic of recreation, sports, and physical activity, in which we see that we want people to have more physical activity to improve their mental and physical health. On the other hand, we manage and we build the parts of the city and also the sports scenarios. Bogota is a city that has 8 million inhabitants and probably similar in size and complexity to Mexico City. It's divided into 20 locations. These are areas of the city in which we have a local administration, we have local mayors who are in charge of being closer to citizenship, but they do directly respond to the central mayor office in Bogota. We have 1,222 neighborhoods. More or less, there are about 30, 50 blocks that are grouped that have common features or characteristics. They share areas, they share activities, or maybe some cultural features also. And we manage 5,230 parks. This is a very large figure, and this brings complexity to the city. These parks, like I'm going to tell you later, are classified in two types. The structural parks that are which size are between 7 and 13 hectares, and the proximity parks are those parks in the neighborhood, those small parks in which people walk with their pets in those places. That's where they do that. The analysis of the public space in Bogota has been quite interesting throughout time, because it has allowed us to see that there's some areas in the city that have less than 3 square meters per inhabitant. The zones that are in red are those areas in the city that grew in an informal way, whether it was an invasion of families that arrived that were driven out to other territories in Colombia because of violence, or they were searching for jobs and they didn't have the conditions to do so in other places, or these were labor or worker settlements that started growing in this area of the city. This is the historical sector, the central sector. They don't have public spaces because the design was thought of in the Spanish logic that was the plazas or parks in which we would find the main church, the city hall, and they don't have any green areas because everything was built. And so other spaces or other areas in the city here that have more than 13 square meters of public space per person, and others over here that have even less than 2 square meters or 1.5 square meters per person. This shows us that it's not, we don't find the same thing throughout the city, and we see that inequality in these green spaces. So as the District Institute of Recreation and Sports, and together with Sustainable Committee, we created a vision for 234 is for people can carry out physical activities and sports, and to be inclusive with the all these new things that will be innovating, and that all the things that are in the park will be adjusted to the climate change, and for us to be champions in the Olympic Games or the national games. So we manage also some sports programs for athletes. So we coordinate all this in our vision to 2038. And that's when is the birthday of Bogotá. So we hope that for the 2038, the children who were born in 2020, that's where we started our administration, and these children will be 18 by then. They can really enjoy a city where they have the right to recreation, to sports, and to parks that are in a broader sense. The Greater Mayor District, this district has some guidelines, and we have objectives to be able to improve public spaces. The first one is the climate resiliency. We have to adjust to these changes that we have right now. Bogotá has the greatest amount of rainfall of cubic meters in the history of the city. We have had a rainfall that was never before. We have had some emergencies close to the mountains because of landslides, because of this amount of rainfall or precipitation. So we have to be more innovative in the design of parks in regard to face these situations that are now emerging. And also, we have the rural settlements and also the urban settlements. Bogotá has 63 hectares in urban area, but it has other 50 hectares in rural areas. And this area is generally ignored by the government or by the development office of the city. We need the protection of the ecological structure to the Bogotá's landscapes, and to be in harmony with the rural environment. Now, Bogotá has a characteristic, and we're proud of it. That's our mountains. When we arrive to Bogotá, we see the mountains first thing, and it reminds us of home. So we want to have harmony between the mountains of Bogotá and the urban area in the city, to have a reactivation of jobs and recreation. We believe that the green spaces generates jobs, and we want it to be harmonic, that relation between the generation of employment and public space, and to have a sustainable rural development, and to have beauty and quality of the habitat. Beauty is also important for us to feel well in a city, and we have to work on this definitely. Territory balance to increase coverage, better environmental conditions, and also environmental connectivity in all our main economic structure. We have some objectives, goals, and some characteristics to be able for our scenarios be more, will be better. better quality. For them to be accessible, not only accessible for people with different abilities or capacities, but also in regard to distance. We need for the people to have a park within 100 meters to be able to enjoy it. Vitality, feasibility. That means for people to find those parks and do that, and also to have safety and security, and also connectivity, environmental connectivity. We have classified the parks in 4 types. That means, doesn't mean that the park is like it says here, but most of them, in any of the types, they have the furniture. For example, the ludic or educational park, they have recreational furniture for children, for youngsters, for senior citizens, and the sports areas. The parks have all the furniture needed to practice their sports. We have the cultural parks that have scenarios or different venues to carry out different activities like musical shows or theater. And also we call them contemplative, because these are part of environmental protection parks where no other activities can take place. What do we want parks to be? Well, for the gathering of people together with nature, and also for services. It is important to understand that the greater competency of the parks are not, or the competition of the parks are not other parks, is the shopping malls, because people have taken the social or the shopping malls as their place to be. And so we want in the parks to offer services to community. Where are we going? Well, to have a reborn of the parks, to have a renovation for that. We offer many things. We don't want to have generic parks that are the same throughout the city. It doesn't matter where they are, but to become landscaping parks. We want for them to have only one species, but to have biodiversity, people that are adaptable, and here to be contextual. And I want to make a parenthesis here. Yesterday, a colleague from Argentina said that creation of Elefante Blanco Park, where designers took into account the opinions of women, females, and it was very important that in the design where they want the male wanted to have only football or soccer fields, but women wanted furniture that would be more diverse for children and senior citizens to have other activities. That show that if we don't include women in the design of public spaces, then it's clear that we won't be able to see that the parks will be inclusive and for diverse. And the machismo or the macho thought here we see in the environment we live in, we see that they don't take into account what female want. We don't want them to be with only one theme. We want them to be spaces to have different activities that are not synthetic. This is a fashion that we have in Latin America, because everything is rubber, everything is hard, when we have the possibility of doing something more in a more natural way. And projects that instead of being closed, which is the conception of security that we have in Latin America, that is to enclose spaces thinking that they would be safer, but rather for them to be spaces that are connected to everybody. And another thing is we want to be neutral carbon wise. We have the first park in Latin America with the certification of carbono neutro or neutral carbon. We want to have a circular economy, the transformation of biomass. For example, the feces of dogs, excuse me, sorry, to use the materials for our signals, and to use all the metals, and to use whatever is needed to compost here. This is our neutral carbon certificate. To end, I want to tell you about this park, which is going to be the iconic park in Bogota, and we want you to know in next May in our South American Forum of Parks. This is a water treatment plant where they made asphalt in Puente Aranda location that was quite polluted, and it will become now the new Derawa Park. We'll have a connection here. We see the trails. We're going to see water in all its states, in all its forms, and will allow us to understand the water process. We are going to have a water garden, also an urban orchard. We're going to have a pollen garden, like they said yesterday in Paris, and also a garden of different spaces to understand all the moments the water goes through. This is going to be our Veraguas Park, and I hope that next year you will be able to see it. What are parks? Parks are a place to get together with a life, diversity, joy, and of course with our city. Thank you very much. Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. This is our last day. It's our last day. Es que se acerca el micrófono. Yeah, she gets close to the microphone. I'm going to talk about Chapultepec Park, the urban forest, Bosque de Chapultepec, iconic park in Mexico City. And in this Congress, we have had 2 or 3 talks about it in this Congress, about the job that we have been carrying out. This is a project called Chapultepec, Nature and Culture. It's an emblematic project, and it's an iconic, the most important one that we have in the country, because it's a project that comes from the federal government and also from the Mexico City government. In this video, I want you to show you what Chapultepec is, and then I will tell you what the project is about. The Chapultepec forest, Bosque Chapultepec, 686 hectares, and now we're gonna 3 sections, and now we're gonna have a 4th section. This green lawns is the largest in Latin America. It's a beautiful natural place, a place for everybody that breathes, grows, vibrates, and transforms everybody who visits it. More than a park, it's an iconic space where we preserve an important part of national history and also cultural activities. Chapultepec has been and continues being an active scenario of the social, political, cultural, and natural environment of Mexico. This identity icon has preserved its majesty through centuries. It has been a sacred and strategic place, magic, splendorous, and also intimate. It's one of the oldest parks of Latin America and a live witness of humanity, with monuments, with bridges, with lakes, sculptures, pre-Hispanic sculptures. It's also where we find art and culture of our cities. We have the complex of museums that is the most important in Mexico. It's also the permanent venue of cultural activities, also music. Culture lives in Chapultepec. Here we see all types of activities for all type of people, seniors, families, children, nationals and foreigners, athletes, and disabled people, and those who want to be connected to nature. The natural resources here is main. We have generation of oxygen, regulation of climate, among other things, and it has more than 120 animal species and more than 70,000 trees. where we see the very ancient ahuehuetes. So Bosque de Chapultepec is not only the lung, but also the live heart for the city because of its beauty, for its size, for its cultural, social, environmental life. The Bosque de Chapultepec gives life to Mexico City. We're very proud to have received through World Urban Parks the World Medal of the Great Urban Park in 2019.
Fortunately, in 2019, we got the gold medal from this Congress. And now I want to tell you what comes after this this award in Chapultepec. Well, Chapultepec is growing with a fourth section that is 73 hectare wide, and that adds up to us with 59 hectares in total. So, we've already talked about connectivity. If there's no connectivity, there comes a problem. So, it is going to be surrounded by walking avenues because this is how it's been for more than 50 years. Now we're building up all these pedestrian avenues and cable buses as well as corridors and bridges. In the first section, as you know, we do have the cultural area. There are the 8 from the most important museums in the country. In the second section of Chapultepec, it is devoted to sports. In the third section, you find environmental issues. In the fourth one, which is a new section, we'll be having a social, cultural, environmental section. And in this fourth section, we intend to sum up all the different activities that are present in Chapultepec. The first section used to be an area, a piece of land that was part of the a factory. And it belonged to the military, and close to Santa Fe. Santa Fe is an area that now it's been developed, but used to be one of the poorest areas in the city. In the previous administration, they decided to continue working on this area and keep producing office buildings and stuff like that. With this new government, we changed that objective and we added that piece of land and increased the size of Chapultepec Park and made it into a fourth section. Now we have a 759 hectare piece of land, and in Chapultepec, project is becoming the project that is very important is surrounded or is focused to work on nature, culture, and social connectivity and social community. Since April 2019 up to December 2023, we have a plan consisting of 44 different actions, including the 4 sections that run from from a social scope to a cultural one and a community one. We started working on the most important museums in this country, and we are planning to have a new branch of the Cineteca Nacional, as well as a warehouse that will try to be there to keep all the important art in the country or from these museums. Now I'm going to give you about a list of the specific tasks and actions that are currently being done in this park. What I think is more important, the most important, is environmental action. Then this environmental area specifically, it gives us the possibility of working in cohesion and of working in order and providing a better quality project for the people around the city. Until now, in the 4 different sections that I presented, let me go back a little bit. At this point, you can see the cultural part. The cultural part is one of the most important spaces that we have. In the cultural area, at this point, which is the poorest area of the city, along with Iztapalapa, this is the poorest area of the city. This is the part of Santa Fe town. It is wall to wall. It is just neighboring a very rich and independent building office building area. It is full of headquarters, and the idea is making it more accessible for everyone, create equality. It is at this point that we decided to change a factory of military cars and changing it into a Cineteca Nacional branch. There is what I mentioned before about the National Art Warehouse that will be keeping inside all the different artwork from the museums of the country and of the city. The firing dust from them. This was also another location that was turned into an environmental and socially responsible area. And this is a Vasco de Quiroga chapel. This little chapel was completely forgotten, and it was within a development that really didn't mean anything. It was just next to the gunpowder factory, right? And now it's been refurnished, and it is going to be used as an artistic spot. Up to this moment, we have planted more than 7,000 trees with a survival that is equal to 80%, which is real high for our city, and around 20,000 bushes have been planted, as well as floor coverage. Don't you think that Chapultepec's soil is very good? It is real poor, and it gives us a lot of headaches in order to preserve the area. However, with us, we also created the seed stock room. So we are currently planting plants from the basin of Mexico and from trees. Since you know that our Chapultepec forest is very old, and there are many trees that are already dead, but they keep being standing. So we are replacing this specimen. These species are being replaced by some other ones, especially localizing and replacing them with some other local species that may survive at least 50 years to provide us with a healthier and better kept park. Apart from the environmental preservation, we do have inside some cultural sites. Let me tell you about this park. This park used to be an abandoned park. It was devoted to urban culture. At this point, and here now youngsters freely enjoy sports they want, and they have the possibility to live next or to do culture, to make culture. We have the Cri Park, the Semillas bookstore, and a library. This is a library. We have also some trails. Trails are mainly devoted to sport activities. At this point, you have some photos on the different activities that may be carried out there in different spaces. For example, I don't know if anyone knows about Mexico City. This used to be Atlantis. Atlantis used to be a recreational center with dolphins. It was kind of an aquarium, and it was transformed as a sports center, especially meant to be used by youngsters. This is the area of the skate park with urban culture, and anyone may come here and draw on graffiti. And we have a lot of activity in this area, because probably you come one day and you have this mural, and next day it's been changed. So these walls are there for people to interact with the areas and to express themselves and use graffiti on it. There are 4 different colonies around, or different neighborhoods that have worked a lot in order to keep this area in a good state. We are intervening these neighborhoods in order to stop crime in the area. Inside Chapultepec, we also have the most antique cemetery of Mexico City. We are currently refurnishing and intervening here, so it might become an area to be tour around. In the next section, that used to be the sports one, we are creating a very important environmental culture center, and with the development of different gardens on different topics, especially gardens bringing flora from the Valley of Mexico. At this point, we also have the topic of reforestation and lake treatment. All these sections that I mentioned before will be all together linked by the cable bus. Chapultepec cable bus which will be bringing all together the 4 different sections that you see in Chapultepec, from the very town of Santa Fe to the entrance of Los Pinos Cultural Center, from the first section. Okay, currently we are trying to recover infrastructure from Chapultepec that consists mainly of museums. Those museums are being refurnished, updated, and being provided with updated information, especially talking about museums. For example, the dioramas used to be old and with information that was not precise, but now everything is being changed, and more than 22 million inhabitants, well, not inhabitants, but visitors that come to Chapultepec a year, we have access to culture. There is a specific area of theater, development of theater. However, this community lacked the possibility of rehearsing. So now an scenic pavilion is being built. So this is going to be there so for people to use it and to show their art on these corridors. The design and architectural designs of all these areas have been part of international contests, and now we do have environmental technologies to continue developing these structures. This is Environmental Cultural Center, and in some weeks we'll be opening this Environmental Cultural Center. It has some information on climate change and the Park of Chapultepec. This is the art pavilion and the iconic and fantastic first section of Chapultepec. At this point in the first section, we have the development of all these actions, from improving the famous Chapultepec Zoo that is going to turn 100 next year. And the idea is changing its activity and making it change into a reproduction center, especially devoted to fauna from the Valley of Mexico, and tourism research center. And at this point, we have some other museums, like the Tadpole Museum, including a series of temporary shelter from species like the Californian falcon. We also devote an area of very important fauna. This shows the improvement of all the different museums of the forest. I mean, some of them needed basic things such as working on the rooftop. Some months ago, we got an award to one of these activities that were held in the Bosque de Chapultepec. And yes, I'm talking about Insecta, the festival from the park. This is a festival that joins culture and nature. The main axle of this objective is based on providing Chapultepec with culture and with art, as you can see, because each of the areas that exist in Chapultepec is to be embedded into culture. High impact activities have been carried out in our forest or our park of Chapultepec, and we would like it to keep being very, very important environmentally and culturally. This is Chapultepec Nature and Culture. There we got some material that I brought for you to get a little bit more information on each of the details and the activities that we're having in Chapultepec. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the participation of the members of the panel in this session. They'll be available on the side in case anyone would like to address them directly for your comments or questions. Thank you very much, Blanca and Mónica.